Welcome back to and another thing to everybody watching on YouTube. If you are watching on YouTube, don't forget, after this episode, go check us out, or do it right now. Go check us out on Spotify, subscribe to us there. That way you never miss an episode of and another thing, and that way you don't have to have me running the whole time. You can turn the screen off if I'm in your pocket, take me on the go. You can't do that on mobile. Did you know that? Yeah. Keeps going. Anyway. And if you are on Spotify and you are listening and you want to see us on video, you want to see behind the screen, see what's going on here in the studio, check us out on YouTube, subscribe to us there. That way you never miss an episode there. You can check us out on Twitter, and another thing, and just find me there, Yukon Carnitas, a tool for the left. Diving right on in now, on Monday, the president threatened to permanently end America's relationship with the World Health Organization, to end funding to it completely, and revoke U.S. membership if the group does not commit to major substantive improvements within the next 30 days. The president, who has repeatedly accused the World Health Organization of allowing China to initially cover up the novel coronavirus outbreak, said the UN must actually demonstrate independence from China. Chinese officials on Tuesday said that Trump was attempting to shift blame for his administration's incompetent response to the pandemic. All of that, of course, from the Washington Post, right off the headline page there. Worth noting here, and I don't know a ton about it, I will say. I don't know an absolute ton about international relations. I am not a diplomat. I am just an unqualified podcast host here having a good time with you. However, I feel as if the U.S. pulling funding and blaming the World Health Organization for all of this, and it's been said enough, I think, but I want to just say it here, is incredibly dangerous to our stance on the global stage. Essentially, think about it like this. If we stop funding the World Health Organization, what are we going to do for the next pandemic? And what are we going to do if Trump is the president during the next pandemic if we have no support from the world around us? Similar to how we did it now, but do not forget that early on, the World Health Organization did attempt to go to the Trump administration with tests that worked and said, hey, these tests work. They've worked in China. You're going to need these tests. And the Trump administration said, no, we're going to make our own. So take that, World Health Organization. And after everything goes wrong, we're going to start blaming you. And we're going to start blaming China. And it's all you guys' fault because you're a puppet of China. That's the plan. And that's what has happened to this point. So now things are, again, getting testy. They have the World Health Organization, the WHO summit this week, so all of this is starting to come more into the headlines. You will see a lot more about the World Health Organization and its relationship to China and the United States this week, as that will be what's happening on the global stage. And it's worth noting that by not putting money into the World Health Organization, the United States can expect to not benefit from the World Health Organization. And it's one of the other dangerous side effects of a Trump presidency, and this belief that being America first is also America only, because whenever you think about it like this, we are a global community. There is a pandemic ravishing the world. And before, the United States was the country that led the world in this stuff. We would be first to benefit, first to pay, first to test, work hand in hand with other nations around the world, and things got done well, and it felt quicker, and it felt more cohesive, and as if things would actually get done. Whereas now, we have an administration that says that they can do this, and they can do this on their own, whenever, if you look at the numbers, and 88,000 dead to this point does not show me doing a good job on your own. I think we're going to need the World Health Organization going forward, and I think allowing China, our rival, our closest rival on the world stage, to be the one propping up our end of the footing, coming in saying, you know what, the U.S. isn't going to add money, we'll add our own extra funding. We will add, I think they did $3 billion of their own to the World Health Organization, China contributed, which is a quick way to step past the United States in terms of goodwill on the global stage, especially in the health community. So I believe we are again making a huge mistake by not taking part in the World Health Organization and chastising them whenever they were really just doing their job to the best of their ability, and have even announced that they are going to do an independent investigation into their handling of the coronavirus, to put all speculation of wrongdoing on their end to rest. They're welcoming an investigation by private investigators, private firms, to look into them and say, this is what happened at the WHO with the coronavirus. And yet, the president complains and blames. So China's criticism here, totally warranted, totally fair. I'm all for it. Then the next major headline for the day, and we wrote about this on Medium, and it'll be going up on the Medium. If you haven't checked out and Another Thing's Medium page, if you're someone who likes a quick read, quick 5, maybe 10-minute read in the morning for your news, check out and Another Thing's Medium page. We are over there. We wrote yesterday about Jerome Powell, who went on 60 Minutes and talked about the recovery effort, what it's going to take to get the United States back to where it needs to be. Before we talk about that, it's worth noting that Powell and, I know I'm not going to get his name right, Steve Mnuchin, I always say it with too much nch on it, and I know that's not right, but I don't know how to say it otherwise. Mnuchin. It just, for me, it doesn't make sense, and I feel like I need to put the hard MN on it. I don't know why. I digress. Mnuchin and, I got it right that time. Mnuchin and Powell are testifying today before the Senate panel about how the Federal Reserve and the Treasury have handled the distribution and use of funding from the CARES Acts, which are the stimulus bills that have been getting voted on here and there in the past couple of weeks. I think there's been 4 of them to this point. There's been some scrutiny, as there is still $500 million worth of funding from the first CARES Act that hasn't been spent for some reason. That was supposed to be part of the corporate slush fund that was supposed to have oversight, but do not forget that the Republican Party and Donald Trump went in and found a way to eliminate that oversight somehow via the signing process. Whenever they went in and did the final version of the bill or something like that, they took out the oversight of this $500 million, and now none of it has been spent, allegedly, or not enough of it has been spent, and the Senate is obviously asking why they haven't spent this money, while at the same time there's been more money requested and more money asked for. Why haven't we used that to satisfy those needs? Mnuchin will have to answer for that today with the Senate, and I'm sure they'll ask Jerome Powell about his comments yesterday, or on Sunday night now on 60 Minutes. So on Sunday night, and we don't want 60 Minutes, as we are not old or waiting to get to the next thing on a Sunday night. The only reason I ever watched 60 Minutes growing up was because 60 Minutes came on at the end of whatever West Coast or whatever Colts football game was on. They always had the 4:30 game because they were on that side of the country. Regardless, Steelers fan here, didn't always enjoy watching the Chargers or the Colts or whoever got thrown watching on Sunday night, but it would go from that to 60 Minutes. Then 60 Minutes would lead into The Amazing Race, and I really like The Amazing Race. I'm not one who enjoys, like, survival shows all the time. That's not true. I would enjoy a survival show, and I know people like that, Naked and Afraid. And what's the other one? What's the one your dad watches?
He watches Naked.
What? Isn't there another one he watches, too? I don't know, right?
Wicked Tuna.
Oh, Wicked Tuna. Anyway, I don't usually watch those kind of shows, but I did enjoy The Amazing Race, so I would watch that. 60 Minutes has always been an in-between for me. We love it, but we don't watch it, just to get that out of the way. So we didn't watch this actually on 60 Minutes, but we caught the reporting on it yesterday. And Powell said in the interview that he believes that there can still be a strong second quarter and a recovery by the end of 2021, should there not be a second wave of the coronavirus, which I think is an incredibly dangerous lens to view all of this through. Because whenever you think about it, every single projection to this point has said that there will be a second wave. All of the experts, from Fauci down to Birx, down to CDC, projections have shown that there will likely be a second wave of coronavirus, and if not handled properly, it could be more dangerous than the first. Fauci just testified to that last week in his own Senate testimony. Him and that Dr. Rick Bright, they both talked about how if we don't have a strong national effort, if we do not get together, and if we do not act properly now and don't open things up too soon, we can avoid a awful second wave, but right now we are setting ourselves up for a very bad second wave. So despite what Powell is saying and has said, he believes that we can have a strong economic recovery, which is good news to hear. That's positive. It's nice to hear something good for a change in terms of the economy, because all we've heard for the past, 2-3 months is that, we have 36 million people unemployed, I think the number is. I know it's 30-some million people unemployed. The rest of that you can dispute. A lot of people are saying that 40% of those job losses could end up being permanent. There's a chance that, again, 40% of the workforce does not go back to work. And with that being said, there'll be loss of wages, inflation, wages will have to go up. And there's just a huge... everything you read about the economy going forward puts a really big lump on your back that you feel like you have to carry up a hill every time you think about it. And so it's good to hear Jerome Powell say that it's possible that this could be better by 2021, or at least on the way to better by 2021. However, to think that there won't be a second wave and base any analysis off the idea that there won't be a second wave of coronavirus is really dangerous and really misleading to the American people and to the stock markets. The stock markets, again, are not the real economy. Let's keep that in mind. The stock market can go up today 1,000 points if it wants to. That doesn't mean we're going to get 1,000 new jobs out of it. Just because Jerome Powell says something and the stock market goes up, that doesn't mean that things are any better for anybody but those particular companies' stocks that are benefited by whatever the Fed chair says on 60 Minutes. And it's worth noting that on the same day as the 60 Minutes interview, Jerome Powell had been going around saying that we're going to need more money or else we're going to face more permanent job losses. And this is money from the federal government, of course. More job losses that are permanent, home foreclosures, business foreclosures, and all kinds of other catastrophic things for businesses in this country if they don't get more immediate funding from the government. And there is still this $500 million sitting around that's supposed to be spent on corporations, and we're wondering why, and I'm sure we'll find out more today as, again, they are questioning Mnuchin and Powell on why that money hasn't been spent yet. But regardless, to leave out the most sure thing that we have from the coronavirus, there's a few things that we're definitely positive of with the viruses. There are still a lot of unknowns. But one of the things that we are sure about, as it has happened with every major pandemic, every major flu to happen, 1918 flu, specifically, there is a second wave that comes along, whether it be in the fall or whenever. I know this one will be in the fall. And it can be worse than the first one, which means, in turn, that the economic fallout will likely be worse than it was from the first one. We could be talking more job losses. We'll be talking more severe quarantine measures. We'll be talking more severe shutdowns. Remember, these quarantines, these state shutdowns were not that strict. People talk about them like it was the end of the world, like fascists were coming in to lock them up and lock them up so that they could pour propaganda into their brains and feed them 5G and whatever other conspiracies people were coming up with. That these stay-at-home orders have not been, these quarantines, these self-isolation orders, have not been that strict. Having to do a 2-week quarantine where you're still allowed to get certain takeouts brought in and people can deliver you your groceries and most essential things are open, and we have streaming, and we have entertainment, and we have family members, and again, we have things from the outside world we can get. Bear in mind, grocery stores, we're still open. You could get food delivered from a lot of restaurants still. A lot of places we're still doing takeout. I know that's redundant to say again, but you could get things brought into you. There is a chance that if a second wave hits, which it inevitably will, and if it is as bad as the first wave and could possibly be worse than the first wave, is there a chance that we're looking at places like grocery stores having to shut down and food having to come from certain warehouses only via food delivery services? Could we be talking about restaurants having to all shut down? Could we be talking about parks, outdoor spaces having to permanently shut down? Could we be talking about full-on having actually having to stay inside for 2 weeks straight, not allowed to go outside, not allowed to exercise, not allowed to take the pets for walks. They have to use pee pads. You have to clean it up inside the house. There is a chance and a reality where that does happen if this second wave is that bad and we don't have a vaccine for it and we don't act prepared. Now, that being grim and that being said and that being taken out of effect by the fact that we have already learned a lot from this virus and taken steps that have mitigated the impact of the virus. The projections weren't wrong at the start of this. Things are still bad. Don't get me wrong, things are still very bad, but yes, the projections were higher, but the only reason the numbers are lower than those projections were is because people have taken adequate social distancing steps and worn masks and kept distance in most places, that is to say. There are obviously, we saw what happened in Jacksonville. So, to discount that second wave and an economic recovery makes me doubt any model put out and any idea of when an economic recovery can even begin if that model leaves out a second wave or a third wave of this even. So, there's things to consider, and leaving them out is incredibly dangerous, I believe. Today, the president is going to meet with Senate Republicans for a lunch in which one likely topic of discussion is to be the potential new legislation in response to the pandemic, another stimulus bill. Vice President Pence will be there. He met with Mnuchin already today. McConnell will be there. Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy will be there. So all the big wigs will be at this luncheon. It'll be interesting to see what comes out of that luncheon. Will it just be, stuff about the next bill? Will it be stuff about Obamagate? Who knows? But they're having a luncheon today, and that takes us to the next big story of the week. The next big story of the past couple of days is what the president said at his press conference yesterday about coronavirus, about a whole litany of things. But we'll get down to it here. During his press conference on Monday, the president announced that he has been taking hydroxychloroquine for a week and a half now. Okay. I know what you're probably thinking. Didn't we just 2 weeks ago get reports that hydroxychloroquine, after being tested at the VA and in other clinical trials, multiple of them, I have them linked in the Medium article, you can check them out when that article is posted, didn't a lot of these test results, a lot of these clinical trials come back to show that there were explicit dangers in unprescribed use of hydroxychloroquine, the anti-malaria drug sometimes used to treat other things, but mostly lupus. And what's the other one?
There's another one.
Lupus, malaria.
Malaria.
Is it just lupus and malaria usually?
Yeah.
Okay, regardless, lupus and malaria, what they're meant for. Aside from those purposes, it can cause you to go into cardiac arrest, aka heart attack, and die. So, the president again said that he is taking hydroxychloroquine, a drug that has been said to be very dangerous and can cause people to die. The president says he's taking the anti-malaria drug despite having all of this knowledge of the dangers of the drug, found in all of this research done on hydroxychloroquine, be it done by Science magazines, where one of these articles is from. I don't know where the VA did one, the FDA did one. It's been tested enough to show, and in independent studies to show, that there are dangers to taking this drug. So if you are watching this, listening to this, and debating, should I take hydroxychloroquine since the president has been taking it for 10 days, and aside from the usual conspiracy theories, bloodshot eyes, sniffling, crazy antics that he usually puts on, nothing too out of the ordinary, do not do it. The FDA and other doctors and other tests have said it could kill you. So do not take hydroxychloroquine, despite what the president says. The president, for some reason, though, has been a very staunch advocate for this particular treatment. It's really unclear why, as there has been, as even Fauci has pointed out, there are other treatments that they're using to prevent the virus. A lot of people have said that just taking zinc can help. Just going as far as taking a little bit of zinc can help you prevent the coronavirus from affecting you, but that's not even 100% true or 100% yet. It's just speculated.
I have a question. I thought that they found out he had some sort of stake in a medical company that was selling hydroxychloroquine.
Oh, yeah?
Is that unconfirmed? I thought we talked about it.
Oh, that's right. A couple weeks ago, or at the start of all this. Okay, yeah. Okay, so it's not so suspicious, but it is still suspicious that Trump does have some kind of stake, a family member, or he himself had an immediate stake in it, in a company that produces hydroxychloroquine. So that could be why he's such a staunch supporter of it. We digress, though. There are other treatments, and he doesn't seem to be an advocate of those treatments, thus raising our suspicions. Asked what his reasoning was for taking the drug, and I'm going to quote here why he thinks he's safe. Why is Donald Trump safe to take this particular drug that has been shown to not be safe for many other people? I'm quoting here. Here we go. You ready? Here's my evidence. I get a lot of positive calls about it. Adding that the only negative things he heard about the drug came from a study done at the VA. A study that, again, like the other numerous studies that are posted in this Medium link that you can check out on Medium, shows that there is an increased risk of death when using hydroxychloroquine to treat COVID-19 symptoms. Again, it is clinically proven that taking hydroxychloroquine for unintended purposes could kill you. Could very likely kill you, especially if you are of a certain age group and of a certain, well, Nancy Pelosi probably didn't need to say what she said this morning about how the president is morbidly obese, so therefore he's at higher risk of dying from hydroxychloroquine, but that shouldn't be discounted either. Not the best wording from her, but I don't know how else to say it. So the president can put himself at danger as much as he wants, and there's a discussion to be had here about should we be concerned about the president's personal health? Does he not have the right to take care of his own personal health and make his own decisions, as all of us do? And you know what? If you're someone who believes that, you're right. You're absolutely right. If the president wants to take hydroxychloroquine because, you know, he got some positive phone calls about it, he talked to this one particular doctor he kept referencing who had really good results from it, and he just wanted to tell the president. He didn't want anything from it. He just wanted to tell the president. Most bonkers press conference yesterday. But if the president wants to take it, that's fine. That's another thing. However, it becomes dangerous once the president starts going up in front of TV cameras, going up in front of the press, and saying, I've been taking it, I feel fine. So, what does that relay to the 30% of people that do whatever this man says? That says, go out, find a way to get this medicine, take it, and hey, if you die, in his words, what do you have to lose? So, all of that being said, the president does this from time to time. We know that from time to time the president will just fucking say something. He'll just decide, you know what, now's as good a time as ever to just come out and say, I'm doing this thing. As he did with hydroxychloroquine and his taking it. He says he's been taking it for about a week and a half now. That's 10 days. Within that same period of time, do not forget that there have been multiple cases of White House staffers for testing positive for the coronavirus. Okay, so the president starts taking hydroxychloroquine essentially as soon as this happens. They released a letter from his doctor saying that the doctor and him consulted it. Worth mentioning that the White House physician never endorses the use of hydroxychloroquine, never says that the president should be taking hydroxychloroquine, merely that they discussed it and found that despite all of the cons of taking hydroxychloroquine, again, despite all of the cons of taking hydroxychloroquine, the risks do not outweigh the reward. So, again, the risk of death. Well, I mean, okay, the risk of death outweighs the reward of possibly preventing coronavirus, which would cause death if you have it. It's quite a thing to get around, and I understand why they would say, you know what, if this can keep me from having it, it's worth a try. However, I don't understand why they would ignore literally every danger the drug has, especially to someone who, as Nancy Pelosi pointed out today, has all the risks that Donald Trump has, and it's worth noting those risks. But why all of a sudden? Why not 3 days after he started taking it? Why not, I guess, 4 days, a week, however long after he started taking it? Whenever there was a chance for him to come out and say, look at me, I've been taking this drug for 3 days now. Been taking this drug that you guys would say work. I've been taking it for 3 days. And look at me, my skin's not falling off. My eyes haven't fallen out of my head. My hair is still kind of my hair.
Did you talk about the hallucinations?
Oh, yeah. I'm not having any hallucinations. Worth mentioning, one of the side effects of this drug is that you could have hallucinations. And I saw a tweet yesterday that said, it's funny that all of this is happening within the same time period that he has started pushing Obamagate on us, which is a clear conspiracy theory with no basis in reality. Which it's interesting to think that he would bring up this story now, that he would do something that would distract from the Obamagate headline. That I believe he so far is winning because despite, he's not winning that headline battle. I should digress now. He had control of that narrative to a point, and things were going well with that to the point where even in the Senate, they are working to pass subpoena powers onto the Senate Judiciary Committee that would allow Republicans in the Senate Judiciary Committee essentially to subpoena anybody in the Obama administration that they wanted to, so they could haul them in to be part of these phony trials. I'll just call them phony trials. I don't know what else to call them. That could be coming down the pike, along with Obamagate. So he's had control of that, so why bring this up now? And the only thing I point you to is that do not forget, there's a lot of things to distract us from right now. A couple of things at least. There is the obvious gross government failure to stop the coronavirus from wreaking the havoc it has across the country. I know Donald Trump and the president, they are the same person. It's still weird. After 4 years of it, it's still very weird, but did not cause this virus to happen. Donald Trump was not in the Chinese lab concocting this virus. I say this joke because it did not come from a Chinese lab. All things are pointed at, though the World Health Organization is investigating that. Just more appeasement for this spoiled, rotten president of ours. However, and it has been well documented, that the president and his administration failed to get testing deployed adequately, failed to respond, downplayed the virus, said it was a hoax to take down the presidency by Democrats. Fox News ran with that. Other media outlets ran with that on the right, and convinced people, a good enough number of people, that there was nothing to worry about. And there were even some in other media outlets that said, hey, maybe we shouldn't panic so much right now in the early stages of it. But once it was here, it is worth noting that everybody took it very seriously. Aside from Fox News and the people in the Republican Party that wanted to downplay it to help benefit Trump's poll numbers. There's even reporting a couple weeks ago that Jared Kushner advised the president that bad numbers would hurt him, thus why the president wanted to downplay bad numbers on the coronavirus, because he knew it would hurt his re-election prospects. Thank you, Jared Kushner. So there was lying, there was a cover-up from the president to mitigate the impact of the coronavirus, not on the country, but on his re-election status. So, obviously, we don't need to look far for gross government failures. They're everywhere. You can just Google U.S. response to the coronavirus, and you'll find a litany of articles that just destroy what this administration has done, pokes holes in it, shows the truth of all of it, and makes it clear as day that they failed us all terribly, and they failed the 88,000 plus dead even more so than they failed those of us who are listening and watching right now, because we're still here. Somehow we're all still here. There's that to distract us from. There is the fact that a vaccine, despite the president's new warp speed committee. And despite good results yesterday in a trial, they reported, I think it was 8 people responded positively to a test vaccine, and that's good. That's good. But despite all that, there is a reality that this vaccine may not be ready until the fall. Regardless, it takes 12 to 18 months. They've been saying that since this thing started. We are 3 to 4 months in. We might still be 8 months out from a vaccine. So we're hoping it can go quickly, but it may not. There is that to distract us from. But then there is also the story going on right now with the State Department and Mike Pompeo. And this is why I think the president dropped what he dropped on us about taking hydroxychloroquine yesterday when he did. Because he could have very well just taken it in silence. And, they found a way for him to... Anyway, they'd find a way for them to play him dying from taking hydroxychloroquine. Don't get me wrong. But why wait to announce it until now? And that's because there is something going on at the State Department and something going on with the president himself that he wants to distract us from, which should be the headline today, not the president taking hydroxychloroquine. And that is this. Over the weekend, the president requested the firing of Steve Linick. Steve Linichik. Steve Linichik is an inspector general at the State Department who was in charge of investigating Secretary of State Mike Pompeo after it was found that Mike Pompeo, at the president's direction, with the president's knowledge, was working to fast track an $8 million weapons deal. I think $8 billion weapons deal with Saudi Arabia. A weapons deal that hadn't been approved by Congress yet. Again, going around Congress's back to deal weapons to a Saudi Arabian government that has shown hostility toward the United States before and played a major role in the 9/11 terror attacks. That is proven, and that is in the commission reports. You can go check those out. They're available online. We know that's where they train it's not important because it doesn't have to do with MBS, but we know Saudi Arabia has bad intentions, and we know that Saudi Arabia work with Russia. We know they work with Putin, and we're working on an arms deal with them and going behind Congress's back to do it. Scandal number 1. Also, being investigated by the same inspector general was Mike Pompeo's use of personal staff to run personal errands, like walk his dog. Use taxpayer funds to get his personal errands done by staff appointed by either personal staffers or Secret Service members that are there to protect him, doing things and all kinds of chores and various things that they're not appointed and supposed to be doing, just so Mike Pompeo doesn't have to do them, which is really the most basic form of government corruption. It's the kind of goofy corruption that they have in movies because it's so goofy and buffoonery type things that you wouldn't think it would happen in reality, because it is so black and white that it is not supposed to happen, that you're not supposed to have your Secret Service agent go walk your dog. There was a jokey quote from one of the Secret Service agents interviewed as part of this investigation where they said that they feel more like Uber Eats than the Secret Service. So what does that tell you about what Mike Pompeo might be doing with his Secret Service envoy? Anyway, so there is that aspect of all of it too. But then you get to the actual firing of it. The firing aspect of all this, which is that Mike Pompeo went to the president before the weekend and said, "Hey, Mr. President, I'd like for you to fire Steve Linichik. He is undermining the work of the State Department by doing this, this, and this." The president says, "Who hired him?" He's an Obama administration appointee. President says, "Okay, I'll fire him." This is from the articles. You can check this out. So the president agrees to fire him, doesn't ask any more questions, just says he'll do it. So he puts in the documents, requests the firing of this inspector general who is there to keep the State Department under control, make sure the State Department doesn't abuse its State Department privileges. President fires him. And then we find out yesterday that Secretary of State Mike Pompeo knew about these asked the president to do this firing. It wasn't known until yesterday that he asked the president to do this, and it wasn't known until yesterday that these investigations were going on. Now, Pompeo says he had no idea. Pompeo says that he was just getting rid of the guy. He was just firing the guy because he thought he was undermining him at the State Department. And that would be believable if there weren't two investigations going on and there being an easy hole to poke in his alibi. So his alibi is that there would have been no way for him to know an investigation of himself was going on, unless an investigation was wrapping up within 48 to 24 hours of him finding out, because that is how, apparently, I found this out today. I, again, don't work in the CIA or in the State Department or anything like that, but whenever they do these investigations, the person being investigated, if it is the Secretary of State, wouldn't find out until a briefing 24 to 48 hours before the public revealing of what was found in these IG reports. So it's very possible that the IG was about to file the report on the $8 billion Saudi Arabia arms deal, because that investigation was close to wrapping up. So there is a good argument that this firing happened in an attempt to stop this inspector general from taking this corruption public and taking down Mike Pompeo and President Trump along with him. And then you add in the firing, which is a clear retaliation by Pompeo via the president. I know there's a lot going on right now with the coronavirus and everything, and it also appears that they were doing all of this underneath the mask of the coronavirus, underneath the fog of the coronavirus, because they knew with coronavirus going on they could get away with it. I'm sure this will be investigated, and it needs to be investigated, because it appears that Donald Trump, again, is trying to use the State Department to get something shady done without Congress's knowledge, and something that would only benefit himself, similar to what happened in Ukraine, aside from Mike Pompeo having people walk his dog. We lost the real story yesterday, and this is the danger of Donald Trump over the next few months. He will have the podium and ability to throw whatever mush out there for the media to grab up at. And he'll do it every time something bad comes along that people would actually care about. Surprisingly enough, people do actually care that the president misuses institutions for his own benefit. There's polling to show that. But every time something comes out close to that, here's a little sprinkle of palace intrigue. Here's a little something crazy that the president said. Here's a crazy conspiracy theory for you guys to follow. And it distracts us from the major story. Now, we did find with Obamagate. I know we talk about Obamagate, but Obamagate never took over the headlines. It was never the leading story on the New York Times or on the Washington Post headline. Today, however, the president taking hydroxychloroquine was, and it should not have been. In any other media atmosphere, it would be, the headline would be something like President fires IG after IG finds wrongdoing at State Department. That would be the headline. Then the sub-headline would be something like, President tries to deflect by pushing anti-malaria drug that could kill you if taken taken unprescribed, or something like that. But however, this is the ecosystem of the media we live in, and they'll trace that palace intrigue, and they'll chase that scandal, and they'll chase that quote in that headline, whatever carries more weight with people, whatever's more entertaining. And we have to avoid that, or else, again, we'll lose the real news, and we'll lose the real message and the real problems going on in government. And if we do that, Donald Trump can win the headlines, and Donald Trump can win the narrative, and that's the worst thing that could happen for all of us going forward. Thank you for listening to the midweek edition of Oh, and Another Thing. Again, check us out on media. Thank you. Jesus Christ. Check us out on Medium. Check us out on Medium. Read all of our articles there. Check us out on Spotify if you're listening or watching on YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify, check us out on YouTube. Subscribe to us. Leave us comments. Leave us ratings. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back on Friday with more Oh, and Another Thing.